Hello and welcome back to my channel. Now today I think I'm going to take stock of the setting and characters and use this as an opportunity just to review the area and what we have generated using the Dungeon Master's Guide. But before I go into that, there is one thing to do with Seaward that I noticed in the last video I'd missed out, and that was to do with his magic items. And when we were doing table 2, it was supposed to be 2 items, and I doubled up. I think he got a crossbow of speed, and was it a hammer? Yes, it was the hammer +2, and they, according to the table, were already just 1 item because you got 2. So I've shortchanged Seaward a magic item, so I do apologize, my lord, and we'll make recompense with this roll. So together we'll keep ourselves true, and here we go. So it's just another D8 and a D6. So let's just square ourselves up with Seaward. So we have a 3. 1 ring, protection +3. Now that's isn't that a useful addition to his armory and arsenal? So if we just do 1 ring of protection +3. Now I'll have to look at the blurb on that just to see exactly what. That's probably going to be quite, when you think of it on his finger, it's going to be quite large. Maybe it's got a gemstone, sapphire or something. It means something important. Okay, that's good to know. Right, back to the main point. Yeah, just actually before I go into the area and the characters, just to kind of do a recap, I just wanted to kind of step back a bit. I've been thinking about this from maybe a couple of videos back, and I wanted to ask some questions about the solo role-playing aspect. And you could, maybe, all these videos that I've been doing, and I've been generating this setting, and I've been laboring away over these characters, you might ask, why, Brian, are you putting all this effort and investment into this setting at this stage? And also, why the interest in the player characters and almost like a growing affection for their fate when they could easily just be killed when the party TPK'd? If you look at some of the things that can happen to players in the random dungeon, I was looking through the tricks and traps the other day, and I thought, imagine trying to get yourself out of these situations. A shoot down 1 level cannot be ascended in any manner. So that means you go down 1 level, you've got to walk around the rest of the dungeon, level 2 say, have a periodic check for stairs, table 6, and then hope that you get stairs that go back up again. Or maybe there are some escalators. I don't know, it's that type of thing. You feel like the characters effectively just died. You'd have to be rescued by some party. Maybe that's something you could do. You could have your own escape plan. So say if I don't come back from this place of mystery, say in a couple of days, send out a search party. But it sounds a bit organized for me. And this is the other one. Door falls outward, causing 1 to 10 hit points, or stone falls from the ceiling, causing 2 to 20 hit points of damage. That would kill anybody in my party. You've got to save against petrification. And these saving throw rolls aren't easy to pass. So, yeah, I'm kind of going off on a tangent there. what I wanted to say was just in answer to these two questions, the one about the investment in the player characters and the effort I'm putting into the setting, I would say in my defense and the defense of a solo role player, these investments are just as important as the adventures and the playing, because I think they are actually as fundamentally a part of solo role playing, of the solo role playing experience, as any of the other aspects. So even the dungeon exploration out in the wilderness, rolling for random encounters, the setting design and the investment in the player character's backstory, I think they're just as important. So let's talk about the setting design. If you think about it, we are living out the solo dungeon master experience. So if you were a dungeon master and you had a group of player characters that came around as your regular gaming group, you'd be designing your setting. And just think of the enjoyment you get. I was a dungeon master. The enjoyment you get about designing that setting, and that's part of the game, isn't it? So as a solo role player, you incorporate that dimension, and you also, for the player characters, it's the solo player experience that we're trying to capture. So if I was a player in this campaign, say I was the elf, I would be interested in my backstory. I'd be interested in what languages I've got and what spells I could use and all that type of stuff. So again, as the solo role player, you're capturing that aspect. So it's almost like you're playing all of these parts combined. And I think the end result is I'm really enjoying the this kind of experience. Just what a few die rolls and the tables and some interpretation of the results, they've basically produced this fantasy setting, which is quite extraordinary, really. So I think one last pick. I don't want to keep. I sound like some old curmudgeon saying you don't want to do it like this, you want to do it like that type of thing. But I suppose just as a general bit of advice, and an advice I'd give to myself is take your time, go off on tangents if you want, go at your own pace. You know, if you are really into the design of the setting, knock yourself out, just go for it. If you're really into the player character's backstory and you're really interested in, you know, I've got a new interest in what a tanner is, and you know, what this cleric with his husbandman skills. You know, is he into training horses? He might be a horse whisperer for all we know. So it's that type of stuff that you can really get your teeth into. And if you take your time, it just starts to snowball. Okay, enough of the reading. I feel like I'm on a pulpit. Let's get back to the setting review. So, if I get my overall map of the area, and what we have here is our 15-mile hexes. So the first thing I want to hark back to is this political event. We just decided that there'd been a rebellion, a serious rebellion, 1 year ago in the kingdom. It's going to indirectly affect anything that we do here. Now, I was looking through some of the history of what rebellions are, and they can also be, talking about my own country, they can be large social revolts too. So we had a peasants' revolt in England in the 14th century, which was very significant. and that's where we had the monarch Richard II being challenged by the peasants. The French in, I think it was the 1350s, it's probably as a result of the 100 Years' War and all the economic strain on that society. They had what was known as the Jacquerie, which was a big revolt against the nobles. So, maybe this is a social, we did talk about whether it was maybe down religious lines. It could be an alignment thing, or it could be political, which is between, say, noble houses, or maybe there's a breakaway group of nobles. I'd like to explore that later on. I don't really want to almost define it now, but have this social dimension included. It could be like the peasants are revolting, which isn't that a Monty Python joke? I don't know. Let's have a look at Marchton, because I did a nice write-up of Marchton. Here we go. So I made it all nice and neat. But while I was doing that, I did remember, there's some memory joggers. We have got a chaotic good faction and a minority, which we shouldn't forget about, which might be significant further down the line. So let's keep that in mind. And also the retinue. How do we factor that into the town's economy? They're going to have a direct economic impact on how this village operates. So that's for further down the line. The next thing is, let's just take our detailed hex. We had this hamlet, and I've decided to name it Hawksmore. So it's up on the moors, and I think the rationale is there are hawks hovering around a lot. It's noted for the hawks, and they've almost taken it to heart, the people in the chapter house, and they're thinking, hawks are they've got very keen eyes and they see everything round about. And when you think of it, one of the reasons this chapter house has been set up is to kind of guard the area and keep a lookout on the surrounding badlands. So I thought that was quite appropriate. So that's kind of given the reason why we call it Hawksmore. Population 400. It's a fortified chapter house with a walled community. I was even potentially thinking maybe they use hawks as scouts. But I don't know if there's any spells that can do that, or it would just be a contrivance. They inhabit the moors. It's located on a ridge in the moorland. The occupants are noted for their stoic attitude. So they've probably got the same attitudes as the people in Marchton, but they are particularly stoic because of this hard frontier life. They follow the code of Bane. They have a warrior ethos. Their mission and objective is to stop the incursions from the Badlands and act as a first line of defense. So they are like the heroic frontier warriors. The people that work, the peasants that work for them, are all kind of they follow this ideology and stricture. They might not all live inside the wall community, or maybe they do. They all come in and at night and live there. But during the day, to support it economically, they're out either hunting or fishing or ranging widely across the area. And they have got quite a lot of hexes that they could do that. They could go into this scrubland. They've got the fishing here. They've got the forests. You do a bit of hunting. There's other forests down here. So it's not all a disaster, even though it's got these contaminated areas round about. Okay, so that was what I wanted to talk to you about Hawksmore. Oh yes, this is back to our brigands. Now, yeah, this was fun. I said I would detail out our brigands. Now I've christened them Roger's Roughnecks. I thought that would be quite appropriate. They are pretty rough group, and a term that we use in the UK is a brass neck. They've been, that means you're really you push it as far as you can. You're really in people's faces, and that's kind of like their motto too. And they have a number of 80. They're chaotic evil, which is probably the most extreme alignment. Red Roger is their leader, and Dougal, I've called him Mad Dougal. Now, don't say that to his face because he's not too happy about that. But that's what he's known as in probably with the band, and probably Red Roger himself, and in society in general, because he has a reputation. Now I kind of visualized what he was like, and if you can remember back to the 1984 David Lynch Dune film, I think it's Brad Dourif, he played one of the Mentats, the Harkonnen Mentat, Peter de Vries, I think it was, and he looked like this mad, zany kind of crazy scientist. Well, I thought that he looks a bit like a wizard too, so that's kind of the image that I've got of Mad Dougal. But again, don't say that to his face. They live in a cave complex. Its location southwest in hex D6, which is looking at our down into this Badlands area. So it's embedded inside here to be explored. And their breakdown is that they have their 80. Now, there's an assumption that we make that 10% will be mounted because they're in the hilly mountain area. So I've done that. It's 8 are horsed and 72 are on foot. Now the horses must find it difficult getting around in this type of terrain, this rough terrain. Additional fighters. Now this is quite a host. So on top of it, we've got another 17 individuals, just through what they say in the monster manual. We have a level 3, 4 of them. So that's quite a group. Level 4, 2. Level 5, 2. Level 6, 1. A leader who is 8th level. In fact, that's Red Roger, sorry. So Red Roger is here. He's an 8th level fighter, which because of the size was probably on the low scale. His lieutenant is a 7th level fighter. Yeah, that's really significant, isn't it? Really big, tough, burly guy. And Red Roger has a personal guard of 6 level 2 brigands. We're talking just under 100 cutthroats and ne'er-do-wells, and these are significant numbers if used properly. But the trouble with chaotic evil is they're all over the place. They don't know how to organize, so they're good on like the hit and run and just the quick, maybe an ambush or something. But put them in a lineup with a Roman legion, they don't stand a chance. Our magic user level, I've still got to decide what he was. So that is a question. Now, based on, I think we could do a die roll just now. So I'm going to have him as a minimum of 4, and I'm going to add on, let's say a minimum of 2, and we add on, I'd like him to be quite powerful. So let's say a minimum of 4, and we add on 1 to 3. So he could go up to 7. So let's do that. So that's, oh, right, so he is a level 7. See, that is, the dice have said Mad Dougal is approaching a wizard of significance. Okay, that's Oh, that's an interesting thing to do. I didn't think I was going to cover that. And also, the Monster Manual says that we have a 15% chance of having 2 clerics. So let's do that just now. Don't think you can see that. That's a 70. So we don't have the clerics, so I'll put a big X there. Cave complex, secret entrance. Yeah, that's it also says that it has a secret entrance, so we'll use that if we ever come to coming back to there's prisoners. There's 1 die 10 prisoners, and there's followers of 20 to 50. So there's 1 to 10 of them. I don't want to generate them just now. We know too much about Roger's Roughnecks, but they are a potent force to be reckoned with, and they're probably our biggest adversary so far in the region. Okay. Right. Yeah. We have this. Remember, we had the lonely keep, the tower, out in this hex here. A wee bit disappointed because we didn't really get any occupants. But hey, this might be a place of mystery, because it did hint that it appears deserted, but there could be something there. Now with the naming conventions, I go back to this view that why not just keep it simple, because sometimes simple names have the most impact. Think of things like Blackmoor. Could you imagine any other name to that, or Greyhawk? These are iconic names, but they're very simple, aren't they? Grey and Hawk, Black and Moor. That could be a Black Moor, but it's evocative of something really special. So I'm going to keep it simple. I'm just going to call that Moorland Keep, because that's what it does on the tin. Okay, so we can come back to Moorland Keep at a certain stage. Also, when it comes to naming some of these other geographic formations, so we've got this mountain range, which is just a bit interrupted by this area of rough. I think we should just call that the Black Mountains, because we've got a region in Wales, one of our principalities next to England, that has Black Mountains. I've always liked that name. It's always got a kind of fantasy ring to it. And when we played the Arden game in Chivalry and Sorcery, there was a region called the Black Mountains, and had these fantastic maps, because the Kingdom of Arden we had all these amazing maps that showed almost down to the individual fiefdom. It was a really detailed map, but they had this mountain map, and it had these massive mountain things with these contour lines, and really tight, and it was really quite evocative of a mountain area. And these were occupied by dwarves. So I'm hoping that maybe there's going to be some dwarves in their mountains. On the forest, there's these 3 hexes here. So I'm thinking, well, why don't we just keep just call this this is an old road, the military road. Why not we call this the Old Forest? Suggestions would be, I see. I don't really like the like you call it the Darnellian glade or something. Something that's I sometimes don't really like that. I quite like the simple. And likewise, on this lake, I'm not going to call it a pond. This is a big lake because it occupies a lot of this hex. So when we come to generate this hex and explore it, this lake is going to cover a lot. So let's call it Dark Water. So it's in, because it's close to this, and these areas aren't nice at all. And it's probably in, I was going to say in the shadow of these mountains, literally in the shadow of these mountains, both east and west. So the sun comes up, bang, we ain't going to get too much. I don't think it really works like that, but and also we've got this village, this this supply village between us and the kingdom. We haven't defined what this population is going to be. So I think I'd quite like to just to get an idea of how significant this village is to us in our travels. Now the village, I think I made a mistake when I was doing Marchton last time. I should have used 5 plus a d4. So let's do that. So it's 600 to 900. Where is my d? Oh yes, here's my d4. Let's see what we get. Okay. So it is 700. So we've got a village of 700. Village supply. I just call it supply village just now. And that's where the patrol. It patrols this area between Marchton and Supply Village, and maybe further into the kingdom here. I don't quite know where the kingdom starts and ends, but it must be in this kind of hex. So it's got a population of 700, and we could probably at some stage, if we say we ever travel to it for a reason, we want to maybe visit the capital or something, we might be able to generate what that's all about. Okay, that's good. I wanted to cover that. Also, now that we've kind of almost defined what the populations are of the area, I would quite like to just have a think about what's military power has Lord Seward got at his disposal. And if you think of each of the, so what have we got? We've got Marchton, which has got a population of 600. We've got Hawksmore, which we've said is 400. Now, he has already got his host of 80. There's probably some other NPCs that we're hovering around maybe the 10 to 20 mark. We've got this patrol, which, how much was the patrol? The patrol was, I remember when we looked at it, it was really quite impressive, wasn't it? It was, here's the back of this. Yeah, patrol. Lieutenant, 3, 4, 13 to 24 soldiers. So say we've got 20 in the patrol. We're not going to generate them. Okay. In the actual populations themselves, if you go back to feudal times and you try to recruit your peasants, the population that you'd be looking at is men from, say, the age of 16, 17 up to 50. And you'd expect 40 days service from them. And I've been looking at some history books and they say 15 to 20% of the population for that. Now, I think that is probably going to be too high, maybe in this environment, because you couldn't keep them maybe going for, well, maybe that would say in wartime you get 20%, but maybe just the usual kind of like day-to-day type thing in the militia. We're talking about the militia here, so it's people that are almost like in that either part-time or full-time. Let's go for 10%. So we've got 60 and we've got 10% of these guys. We've got 40, we've got 80, we've got about 20 there, another 20. So what's that? That's 180, 100, 200, 220. So we've got 220 individuals that can form a minimum, our military force. because times of war we can get double that out. We might even get some of the women and children, you know, a bit like what was it, Helm's Deep? They were getting that little boy to do the fighting, old men. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Right, I think I've covered a lot of the area stuff. One other thing, when we were doing the, this got me thinking actually, because it was quite fortunate that we did this exercise where we decided what the subhex was of this volcano. Now, one of the other options was it could have been like a mountain had been smashed by this massive confrontation that we had between these wizards, and it destroyed it and exploded and it landed all over this palace. But I quite like the volcano because that's given a kind of raison d'etre for this hex being corrupted. But I think when we were talking about the Pompeii and almost having an analogy to Pompeii, and the idea that this volcano has covered and probably warped some of the rock and the buildings and into kind of strange and evil shapes. There might still be some geological activity from this volcano. So there could be things like vents and fissures, and that's creating this horrible, like smoky, steamy, sulfurous atmosphere. So going into this, maybe this has been a reason why it's never ever really been approached by the residents of these two communities. You know, they've seen it from a distance and it's covered in smoke and it's too mysterious and horrible. And it's only now that Lord Seaward's come and the chapter is being reinvigorated in Hawksmore that people are thinking, maybe we should be going into these areas and finding out what's going on. Because we know all about all this stuff, but we don't really know what lives in there, what's lurking in there, what treasures potentially could we get. So this is generating maybe some adventure things. But also, as another dimension, the fact that we mentioned the Roman Empire, this gave me an idea for a context for this Wizards' War. What I want to do is determine when exactly, I said about 200 years ago, but let's find out exactly when it was. We'll make some notes. So we've got this event happening. I call it the Wizards' War, the Cataclysm. And I think it's going to be, let's do 100 plus 1d100 years ago. Oh no, let's do, yeah, we'll keep it round. We'll keep it 1d10 times 10. Okay, so it's going to be at least 110 years ago. 170 years ago. Oh, you can't see that, sorry. Yep, 7. That was the whole point of that roll. And I do forget sometimes where the camera cuts off. So this event, I call it, yeah, it could be called The Event, which I'm sure is out of a book somewhere. A cataclysm, the Wizards' War. Let's stick with Wizards' War, I like that. Now, the backstory to the Wizards' War is, this is where I kind of used the CNS influence, and we had this evil empire in it called Archaeron. I'm going to have an empire that's called Acheron. So Acheron is this empire from before the Wizards' War, 170 years ago. So it's pre-170. Okay? And it's a lawful evil empire. It's like Darth, it's Palpatine, you know, it's sort of that type of thing, you know, Star Wars thing where it's all about order, but it's a very kind of ruthless kind of orthodoxy that you have to follow. People get to positions of power based on their how, I suppose, tyrannical they are, and how much control that they exert, and it's very ruthless within a sort of code. And this empire, which occupied all this kingdom, and it extended all the way up into these territories here. So 170 years ago plus, all this area was controlled to some degree by the empire, and it might have had these as tribute states. So it would have maybe the Northmen as federatis, mercenaries working for them. The elves might have been tamed or been fought and kept out. So that was the situation with them. Now, they were ruled by a council of 13, and they were all these 13 council leaders were all very high level magic users. So they were archmages, necromancers, warlocks, all with a kind of lawful evil bent. So a really awful situation for any society to be under. So there's this tyrannical yoke on that's embedded its impact on this area, and they've created all this high civilization. It's like a kind of effectively a lawful evil Roman Empire. So it's capable of very high, culture, I suppose, culture inverted commas, because it's what your definition of culture is. But it's got a sophistication, a level of sophistication, which has never ever been reached since. Now, these wizards have all, through their experiments, have developed almost, I would call it magic of mass destruction. They've got these tools, these devices. Maybe they've got rings, and they've got wands and artifacts and all sorts of dreadful magical creations. They've reached such a level that these are almost like a nuclear level, like an atomic weapon. And they've all got them. They've got 13 of these guys. And they all fall out. There's a rift in the council, and they all fall out. So we have this balkanization of the entire region, and they all go off, they scuttle off to their strongholds. This rift comes to a head 170 years ago, and there's an escalation, which we end up with DEFCON 5, or DEFCON 1, which is effectively a nuclear level exchange that goes on between the different necromancers and council members. And any of the rough hexes that we have on these maps will represent potentially centers where these mages had their homelands. So say this one here was a high level necromancer. Someone maybe from this hex fired his magic of mass destruction and vaporized it. Whereas, and maybe there was another wizard over here that at the same time fired his weapon of mass destruction, and they're all firing at each other, and it's mutual self-destruction. And that's what happened, and that's why that empire fell. And it's only since recently that these younger kingdoms, these feudal societies, have grown up with a vague memory of the evil of the previous regime, and have vowed never ever to ever come back to that lawful evil situation again. And that's why they're always on the side of good. They are lawful. They will fight against this evil. not with a quite, well, maybe with a kind of crusading zeal on the frontier, but with a far more civilized view in the center. Okay, I think that, yeah, I'm really am metagaming now, but it is quite nice. Just, it almost gives some context to some of the certainly I think these hexes, the rough Badland Place of Mystery hexes, they do need a bit of backstory. So the fact that we've got this palace, maybe this was a high dignitary in the Empire, and it got nuked. Someone's lobbed magic of mass destruction, and what it's done is set off a chain reaction with the volcano, which has obliterated the entire area. It probably scarred a lot of this. Maybe this scrubland's been scarred. Maybe that's why it's scrub. Okay. One last thing. Remember our Lindris Runeweaver, the elf from Elf. I call it Elfland just now. I have to come up with a better name than Elfland, but it does the job just now. I was thinking he's 300 miles away. To get to this village, there is no way he was going to be coming through this wilderness, is there? So this begs the question of how do the elves communicate with the rest of the world? And I'm thinking maybe he came by ship. So he's come out, there must be some form of coastline over here. He's come all the way around. Maybe there's like a gulf that comes in, and there's a big port or harbour, say down here. And he's cut into the capital, or maybe the capital is the port. And by hook or by crook, he's ended up the military road and ended up in. So maybe that's his backstory. Okay, I think I've done quite enough of backstories for the time being. Next time I want to get stuck into the adventuring, so we're gonna have our first in design, and we're gonna do some shopping, buy some stuff, and see what all that nice encumbrance rules does to our movement. Okay, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.